Let's talk about something that is on pretty much everyone's mind right now. Why has everything gotten so expensive? I mean, it's a feeling that cuts across all walks of life, right? So today, we're going to dig into the real structural reasons behind it all, and maybe even find a path back to lower prices. This quote from Newt Gingrich it perfectly captures the national mood, doesn't it? I'm doing everything right, but everything is still too expensive. That phrase gets right to the heart of the frustration. It's that feeling that no matter how hard you work, no matter how carefully you budget, you're just treading water or maybe even falling behind. And really, that feeling is the starting point for this whole explainer.
So yeah, let's call it what it is. This is an affordability crisis. And to really get our heads around it, we've got to look past the headline inflation numbers we see every month. We need to start asking some much bigger questions. Like, what are the deep down forces that are making everything from our rent to our groceries just cost so much more? And, the most important question of all, how do we actually fix this for the long term?
Okay, so let's start with what we can all relate to, the squeeze we all feel. This is that very real, tangible pressure on your budget. It's that nagging feeling that your paycheck just doesn't stretch as far as it did a few years ago, even when the news is telling you things are getting better.
And this brings us to what is, for a lot of people, the most confusing part of this whole economic story. You hear that inflation is slowing down. So, why aren't prices coming down with it? When you go to the supermarket, things are still high. What is going on here?
So this is what economists call the stickiness problem, and it's really about two different worlds. On one side, you've got the official data. As economist Jason Furman explains, when inflation slows down, it doesn't mean prices are dropping. It just means they're going up at a less crazy pace. But then, on the other side, there's your budget, your reality. Those higher prices from last year are pretty much locked in, creating this huge gap between the economic headlines and what you're actually living.
There's actually a great term for this, from economist Claudia Sahm. She calls it household cost drag. And it's such a perfect description, right? It's that growing gap between what you have to pay for essentials, we're talking housing, healthcare, childcare, and the money you actually bring home. So even if you get a raise at work, if the cost of those essentials is rising even faster, you're actually going backwards. That's the drag.
So, okay, that cost drag is a big piece of the puzzle. But let's dig a little deeper into why these high prices feel so, permanent. There are a few more things going on here.
First off, there's wage lag. Prices can literally jump overnight, but it can take months, even years, for wages to catch up, if they ever fully do. Then you've got something called substitution fatigue. Just think about it. You've already switched to the store brand. You've canceled the streaming services you don't use. At a certain point, you run out of corners to cut. And on the flip side, a lot of companies realized they had some serious pricing power. They found they could raise prices and customers would still buy. So now, why would they lower them? Instead, you just see more special promotions or sales, but the actual sticker price stays high.
All right, so we've got a good handle on the squeeze and why it feels so persistent. Now let's get to the real core of this explainer. What are the massive structural roadblocks that are keeping prices so high?
We're going to break this down into three big core problems. First, there's the immediate fight against inflation. Second, a much deeper issue we're calling the production bottleneck. And third, something that quietly impacts all of us, but we rarely talk about, the hidden tax of waste.
So roadblock number one is the one we hear about on the news all the time, the inflation challenge. And the key thing to understand here is what a delicate balancing act this is. Policymakers are trying to cool down the economy just enough to stop prices from spiraling out of control, but not so much that they crash the whole thing into a recession and cost millions of people their jobs. It is an incredibly difficult tightrope to walk.
Now, the second roadblock goes a lot deeper. Let's call it the production bottleneck. For decades, really, America has just gotten slower and more expensive at making and building things. It's become incredibly hard to build new housing, it's too slow to get new energy projects up and running, and when supply just can't keep up with demand, prices have nowhere to go but up. It's basic economics.
Elon Musk has a really sharp take on this. He says the problem is that we've optimized for process instead of outcome. And when you think about it, that really hits home. We've built all these systems of endless paperwork, permits, and reviews that slow everything to a crawl. The goal becomes just checking all the boxes in the process, not actually getting the thing built quickly and well.
And that leads us perfectly into our final roadblock, the hidden tax of waste. Now, we're not talking about just throwing things in the trash. This is about massive, systemic inefficiency. Think about clunky government systems, tangled supply chains, endless regulatory delays. All of this friction in the system, it acts like a hidden tax that gets passed on to you, making everything you buy just a little more expensive.
So, where is all this waste hiding? Well, this chart gives us a pretty good idea. A massive 35% chunk comes from outdated government systems, clunky processes that haven't been touched in decades. Right behind that, you've got inefficient supply chains. Every little delay adds cost. Then there's energy inefficiency and, oh boy, the staggering cost of just healthcare paperwork. Every one of these slices is a friction point in the economy that you end up paying for at the checkout counter.
Okay, so we've laid out the problems. It's a lot, I know. But here's the optimistic part of our explainer. Let's talk about the way forward. Because this isn't about just managing scarcity. It's about building a genuine path to abundance.
So the first and maybe most straightforward solution is this. We just have to build more. Period. When it comes to housing, that means cutting the red tape and streamlining the permitting that can hold up a new apartment building for years. For energy, it means modernizing our grid so we can get cheaper, more reliable power to everyone. At its core, it really means our whole government needs to shift its mindset to build first. Focus on the outcome, not just the process.
Solution number 2. Innovate faster. And this is really exciting stuff. Imagine AI helping to crush all that healthcare paperwork we talked about, freeing up doctors to actually see more patients. Picture robots and 3D printers building parts of homes cheaper and faster than ever before. But here's the thing. Technology is only half the battle. You need skilled people to run it all, which means we have to invest in training and talent to make these innovations a reality.
And that brings us to our final big solution. We have to work smarter. This is all about attacking that hidden tax of waste we identified earlier. It means building smart, digital supply chains that can see problems in real time. It means finally modernizing core government services to get rid of delays. It's about cutting through that complexity that adds cost but absolutely zero value.
So, as we pull all of this together, the single biggest takeaway is this. Affordability isn't some random force of nature that's out of our control. It is a choice. It's the direct result of a series of choices that we make as a country.
And that idea is just perfectly captured in this quote from investor Ray Dalio. Prices fall naturally when a country builds more, innovates faster, and operates more efficiently. That's it. That's the whole game. Real, long-term affordability doesn't come from some short-term gimmick. It comes from creating a genuine economy of abundance.
Which leaves us with one final big question to think about. Is this affordability crisis really just a problem of policy, something we can fix with a few tweaks here and there? Or is it a much deeper problem of production, one that requires us to fundamentally rethink how we build, how we innovate, and how we grow as a country? Something to chew on. Thanks for diving in with me.